Hello.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me today.
Oh, it's so good to see you. How is your day in the
It
general?
has been busy, but I feel like that is normal for an entrepreneur and an author who's releasing a book. So I feel grateful for all of the busy things on my plate.
Yes, it is a very singular moment in time that you sort of just have to go with, right?
That's
It's just
right.
like this won't be forever, and I'm
That's
just going
right.
to go with this.
Exactly.
Well, I love your book, and I dog-eared a lot of it, but
Oh, thank you.
yeah, I sort of wanted to ask you to introduce yourself to my audience.
Sure. So, my name's Jessica Turner, and I'm an author and influencer based in Nashville. I've got three kids. They're 16, 13, and 10. And the book that I just wrote, I thought it would be better than this, is a book about disappointment, but not just disappointment, but how do we move through that disappointment and really create a life that we love? And it's for any sort of grief or disappointment in life. My story is that my husband came out during the pandemic. We'd been married for 16 years. I didn't know, and sort of just shattered my whole life. I started over in a lot of ways, including leaving corporate America to be a full time creator and writer. And the book is a bit my journey and kind of one part memoir and one part self help. Mel Robbins endorsed it and said, "This book will change your life." So that feels
Very
good and
good.
exciting. And just hope that it does help people feel seen in whatever their stories are, that your disappointment doesn't have to be a period on your life, that there can still be an and you can write the next chapter as you want it to be.
I want to highlight disappointment. It's
Hmm.
not the thing that I think is really interesting about your book is that you tackle disappointment, which to me is such an interesting thing because I feel like, as women, we're sort of raised to expect disappointment, but we're also raised to expect a lot. I mean, those of us with privilege in the world, right? And so it's this interesting balance of, as a woman, you sort of are used to fighting a lot of battles and maybe being disappointed, but you also maybe reach a point in your life and like your title says, I thought it would be better than this. That feels like a bold statement. It's a lot to ask for a woman. Like, I deserve better than
Mm.
this. Why did you tackle this concept?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you say that we're kind of taught to expect disappointment because while I do think that disappointment is one of the universal experiences of life, I think that we are taught that everything's going to be great. Like, I think we're taught that this idea that, we're going to get the job and we're going to have the perfect family, and like life is just going to go great if you make these decisions
You
and
work hard enough.
if you work hard enough. And like, it just doesn't look like that for most people. I think we all have a something in our life, we all have something that we're like, oh, I thought my marriage was going to be better than this. I thought my career was going to be better than this. I thought my finances were going to be better than this at this point in my life. I thought parenting was going to be better than this. And we're kind of afraid, I think, to admit that. And so I think this book is a little bit of a permission slip. I'll go first. I'll tell you what I thought was going to be better. And you can find yourself in these pages as well. It's been interesting over the course of the 3 years of working on this project, how many people have been like, oh my gosh, that's such a good title. I feel that. It's like everyone feels that. I was at the DMV today and the woman was telling me about like her grief story. It was sort of strange, just standing at the counter and she's telling me all these awful things that she's been going through. And I told her the title of the book and she got it posted and wrote it down. It was like she felt
Amazing.
so seen standing right there. And I think it's just something we're afraid to say, but we all feel it in our gut.
Yes. Yes. And I think your point is that sometimes the this isn't a grand failure or a huge tragedy or a trauma. Sometimes it really is looking up and thinking, I thought my career would be more exciting than this. I thought my
Hmm.
marriage would be more exciting than this. I thought I would have seen more of the world than this. Whatever your this is.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that, right?
Mhm,
Like so many of us are going through the motions of our day to day. And I know I was in my marriage, and I never really paused to think, What do I want? I did think this was going to be better than this. And what I actually want is this. And I think this book, as people read it, forces you to kind of evaluate what
mhm.
your this is and kind of draw a line in the sand and say, okay, I thought this was going to be better. What am I going to do about it? Like, you're still breathing. You still have life to live. Let's make it better. And create something that you love and that does make your heart beat a little faster and does get you excited and does make you feel more grounded and more alive. I think all of those things are possible, even if you are in a season of disappointment.
Right. And you point out you grieved your marriage and the dissolution of your marriage. It didn't happen overnight. You had been together a long time. It took you time to split. But one of the things that a chapter I really loved was speaking the words you most fear.
Mm, yeah.
That is a really hard thing to do. Why is that important in the sort of moving on process, and how do you start?
Yeah, I think you start with just one person. It actually might be starting with yourself of saying that thing aloud, but in vulnerability, we find freedom.
Mhm.
And when we find freedom as we truth tell, we're able to move forward lighter. So even that thing that's really hard to say, in my case, it was my husband's gay, we're getting divorced. That takes people by surprise when you say that to them, you know? But when you admit these deep truths, you actually feel so much lighter, even if it's really hard initially to do. And I think the more you do it, then the easier it becomes to say, and this, and this, and this, like my marriage ended, and this is what I hoped to have in a relationship. And this is what I think I deserve. And this is what I know that I need. Like I just started, it was a snowball effect that happened after I started telling my story. And I think that's true for anyone as they are honest with their situation and tell people that they trust. It's really important to identify people that can carry what you're sharing and are
Um,
safe to tell that to.
Did you start in therapy with that story?
Yep. Therapy was my first step. Certainly, I think because of the nature of what I was going through. At first, my husband came out and said he was bi. And then 6 months later, he said he was gay. And so there was this process where he was uncovering things and we were uncovering things together, and we didn't know like if we could tell our family what it was going to look like. I also didn't want to carry the weight of the burden of their sadness
Mm,
as we were going through these things. And so first it was with my therapist, then it was with a few trusted friends, then it was a few more friends, then it was family. And some of that happened too as there was healing, and I felt strong enough to be able to say those things aloud.
yeah. It's funny, um, I think with my audience, a lot of us are sort of experiencing a huge disappointment in that, we're at a point in our careers where we feel like we are so smart and we've done so many things and we're at the top of our game, and the
Hmm.
world may not react to us like that. The world may not be as interested in us.
Yeah.
And I am finding a lot in my community on LinkedIn of, I really thought it would be better than this. People don't seem to want me. People don't think I'm
Mm.
important. People don't want to pay me what I think I'm worth.
Mhm.
And facing those, and they may be truths, is
Yeah.
so painful. You can't control it.
You
You're
can't
angry
control
at
it.
it.
You can't
No,
control it. Something that a friend said to me as I was going through this, she said, "Jessica, you can't control the lines of the story that Matthew is writing, but
your
you
ex-husband.
can." My husband, yes, my ex-husband. Um, but you can control the lines in the story that you are writing. And so I think for the people in your audience who are feeling that way, they can't control how people see them or how much money they're getting paid at this particular job or whatever those
or global
dissatisfactions and
capitalism or
disappointments are.
Asian
Right.
systems or the
Right.
recession or the
That's right.
government, right?
We can't control those things. But what we can control is how we react to those things. What we can control is what we do next with where we are going through those experiences. We still have agency. We still are making choices every day of what we're choosing to do next, what we want, the next months, years to look like. And so I think it's pausing and saying, okay, this is my circumstance right now. What is it that I want? I actually take people through a SWOT analysis for their own lives in the book, and that's something
Take
that
us
I
through
did
that.
in
Yeah.
business, but what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my opportunities? What are the threats that are impacting the work that I'm doing or the life that I want? There's lots of different ways that you can slice it, but those same principles that in business work to apply to your own story. And so I would say that you still are writing your lines, even if this is how the world is seeing you, even if we're in the middle of a recession. Like, all of those external things are true, and you get to write your lines for your story. I really believe that to be true. I could have been extremely angry and bitter and stayed that way,
Hmm.
but that wasn't the story that I wanted for my life. And so I wrote different lines, and I leaned into therapy, and I met with experts of things that I didn't know how to do. And I learned new skills so that I could still have a beautiful life, even if that beautiful life was not the same beautiful life that I thought I was going to have. Right.
Right. How long did it take you to move on from that piece of the, wait a minute, I'm sort of stuck here in this is what I thought I signed up for. And
Mm.
wait, you're telling me I have to rewrite my whole story? I don't want to do that. I'm busy. I have kids. I have a job. Like, I don't feel like I feel that way. I'm like, I know I don't want any more change. I'm busy.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that grief, there's like an endpoint or a destination. And
Mm.
so I think it was something that happened really slowly. And I think that is hard to know, right? That like it isn't a quick fix. It isn't 5 stages to go through and you're done in 3 months. I healed, and there was like a wound. There was scabbing, and then there was scarring, and scars still ache at times, right? And so it just got to a point where days slowly started to have more good days than bad days, right? And the pendulum kind of swung in the other direction. But that didn't mean that there weren't still hard moments. That didn't mean that there aren't still times where I'm like, oh, I guess I still have some work to do on that one thing. But
Mhm.
having an awareness and paying attention to that and knowing myself has made that an easier process to heal and grow.
You also had a period of profound financial change during this big period of change in your marriage. You left a corporate job that you had had
Hmm.
for many years to pursue something that is inherently unstable and
Sure.
self-driven. Talk about why you did that and how you felt able to do that in the midst of all this change.
Yeah. A friend said to me, Jess, the dream of your marriage died, and you can't let this other dream die.
And
And
what was that dream? Just tell us a little bit
and
about that.
sure, yeah. And that dream was to be a entrepreneur, to be a full-time creator and influencer, to not have a traditional 9 to 5 job. My ex-husband is a writer. And so I carried the healthcare benefits and the retirement benefits and all of that. And so it felt like this big, scary thing for me to leave, but it was something that we had been talking about. And then Matthew came out, and then the pandemic happened. And so I just stayed in that job for security, stability, because of fear, honestly. And I just knew that I would regret it. And it felt like the perfect time, kind of post the pandemic, during the pandemic, and right after it. My online business was really thriving. I had grown a lot. I was getting more opportunities to work with brands. And it just felt one of those, like, for such a time as this, kind of moments that I had to do it then. And so I got that proverbial boat as close to the shore as I could, and I saved a lot, and had contracts lined up, and I had networked a lot and had friends that had kind of helped introduce me to people that I was getting contracts for, and just felt like, okay, I have to take this leap and do it. And I knew that if it didn't work out, I could go back into corporate America, that I had those skills. But I knew in my gut that I was going to regret it if I didn't choose to take that leap.
Mhm.
And I did it. And it was, I think, one of the best decisions I made post divorce. It has changed my life for the better in every way.
What did you do right about that decision that other people can learn from?
I had plenty in savings. I was very risk averse. And so that was something that for me felt really important. I think I had at least 6 months salary. So more than kind of what people generally say. I think they say 3 months, but I had more than 6 months. And that was really good because I felt really secure.
Yeah.
I also left in a period where I was naturally going to have more financial success. And what I mean by that is in the influencer world, Q1 and Q2 tend to be slower
Mhm.
financially, whereas Q3 and Q4 tend to be busier. There's more opportunities. You make more money in the second half of the year. And I left in May. So I was
Mm.
leaving as I went into a time that I knew that while I didn't have contracts for Q4 really at all yet, I knew that those were going to come. And so it felt a little safer
Yeah.
than I think if I had left in January.
Yeah.
Um, so and that was the last thing I think is just trusting yourself. Like I'll bet on a lot of other people, and this was an opportunity for me to bet on myself and know that I was going to be okay. I had already experienced the resilience that had come out of the divorce initially, and this just felt like the next thing that I had to do, and the biggest thing that was going to have the most positive ramifications. And um, I don't think that it's bad to bet on yourself.
Last question. We talk a lot on this show about post-traumatic growth and sort of not just surviving challenge, but really
Hmm.
building muscles so that you can
Yeah.
thrive in new ways after challenge. And I'm curious, what do you do differently now than you did 5 years ago?
I exercise.
Re-
5 years
Oh,
ago, I didn't exercise at all. That's
interesting.
the initial thing that comes to mind. I I'm one of those people who bought a bike during the pandemic, and I now work out like over 200 days a year. And 5 years ago, I didn't work out at all. And
Wow.
so moving my body has been tremendously beneficial, not just for in the physical sense, but for my mental health, for my well-being. And it is, I think, the best thing that I changed in my life in the past 5 years is adding activity to my life on a regular basis.
That's really cool. I was not expecting you to say that, but that's very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I hope that this book is really helpful to a lot of people. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about it today.
I know it will be. I know.
Thank you.